Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. So subscribe there if you would. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the extra edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. And I'm here with Derek Vandygriff. And Derek, we've been saying for like weeks now, it's like, hey, we'll talk about baseball again in January. We'll talk about baseball again in January. And it seems like you still are coming on every single week.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always something to talk about with baseball, right? You know, and we mix in a little bit of the MLB flair too with it, so it's not all strictly Ole Miss. But you know, there was actually some news between the last time me and you talked. You know, we kind of touched on it last time with me looking at Luke Hill there, and you know, turns out it ended up happening.
Yeah, he's a good player out of Arizona State. The coach lost his mind a little bit when he transferred, but if you just look at his stats and look at the highlights of this kid playing, this is a legit shortstop prospect.
Yeah, it's a really good pull for us, right? You know, he's got a Baton Rouge. We obviously had a gaping hole at shortstop after, you know, losing Jacob Gonzalez and Cooper Pratt in the draft, and then Urso going back to Tampa. So yeah, there was definitely a need there. We needed a warm body, and they went out and did far more than that. They not only got a warm body, they got one of the best freshmen in the entire country to come plug that spot.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure which podcast it was. It may have been Talking Champions, but if I got the wrong one, I didn't do it intentionally. But they interviewed Mike Clement, and apparently they can already talk about these players, so they must already be in school.
Yeah.
So he said that Luke Hill, his bat is the thing that actually has him really excited. He's more of an Anthony Servideo type shortstop, a little bit more athletic, smaller guy, but his bat kind of has him excited. Talk about that.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of the same way. I think that's a really good comparison. I haven't heard that yet. Anthony Servideo, that is a really good comp for him. You know, he just makes a ton of contact, and he's got a lot more pop than you would think just looking at him, right? I mean, he hit 14 last year, I think 6 home runs. You know, but out there on the West Coast, the baseball they play out there in the Pac-12, you know, there's some bigger stadiums and all out there. I think he'll end up doing pretty good getting down in this getting down and hitting in this Mississippi heat that we have down here. I think some of those will start flying out. And again, he's a freshman. I think that was another really big deal for us now. You know, this isn't a rental guy we're getting. This is a guy that's going to be here for a couple of years, you know, playing shortstop for us. So we've got him for 2 years. Obviously a really high upside. Coming out of Baton Rouge as a high school player. I think he was number 4 player in the entire state in Louisiana. And that's a really, really good state for baseball. So whenever you're in the top 5 in Louisiana, you obviously have something there, right? And so yeah, you know, if he comes here, gets the kind of coaching that it seems that every shortstop we have always seems to get. I would think that was really attractive for him too. Not only the gaping hole, but you look back at you know, our last 3 shortstops, Jacob Gonzalez, Anthony Servideo, and Grae Kessinger, they all went in the top 2 rounds of the MLB draft. And so, you know, that had to be really appealing to him. That's just one position we always have. It's always shortstop and catcher. We've always got studs there. So hopefully he comes in, gets that hair dyed blonde, and just gets put in shortstop in the top of the order too. I think that's where he's going to hit. You know, that's probably going to be our leadoff hitter too. But yeah, really good bat, really sound contact guy, really athletic too. That's what I really like about him. And like I said, him being here for 2 years is sitting a stopgap type thing. This is a player you can actually pour a lot of you know, development into and kind of see him grow a little bit over his next couple of years. So I think it's going to be really good for us.
Yeah, and you mentioned dyeing the hair blonde and all that. I think this year Jacob Gonzalez did not dye his hair blonde because they won the national championship last year, and he was the stud, and he could do it, and then they go 6-24 in the league.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you got dyed again, right? See,
Right.
Jacob screwed all that up for us, right? Now
Yes.
we're not going to sit here and talk trash about Jacob Gonzalez, obviously, right? But
in my opinion, he's the best player that's ever suited up at Ole Miss baseball. Period.
100%. Yeah. He was incredible for us, obviously. You know, you can't say enough about. Lord, I can go on and on. I know I've mentioned these guys 100 times on this podcast, but the Jacob Gonzalez, Tim Elkos, Kevin Grahams, Justin Bench, those guys, what they did for this university and this baseball program, as long as they stayed around, and you know, finally got us over the mountaintop there, right? And so they're always going to be legends. Jacob Gonzalez, all those guys can do whatever they want to, dye their hair, whatever they want to, or don't dye their hair. I don't really care. But Luke Hill hadn't done that yet, so he better go find somebody in Oxford to get that thing done.
Yeah, he needs to prepare to be a bottle blonde, essentially.
Yeah.
It didn't stop with Luke Hill. Ole Miss got a commitment from Jackson Ross. He played third base at Florida Atlantic, but he is a position versatile player that could play some corner outfield and anywhere in the corner infield. So you might see him at first base as opposed to a Will Furnace or something like that. So that's something we should probably keep an eye on as well, right?
Yeah, and again, another really good get out of the port, right? This is a guy that was a first team All Conference USA selection down there at Florida Atlantic. Hit 345, 15 home runs. So a guy with pop, obviously, and I know a lot of people who look at it saying, well, he came from Florida Atlantic. Can he handle the pitching week in, week out in the SEC? They ended up playing 4 games against Miami and Florida throughout the year. Florida Atlantic did, and he ended up going 11 for 23 against those 2 games, the 4 games they ended up playing. So he's seen this level pitching before. Obviously, we know what Florida had on the mound and with the pitching staff, and Miami was a top 8 seed or top 16, one of the two. I know they ended up hosting this year, so another really good program. So he's faced this level of competition before, and not only has he faced it, he's handled it really well. So yeah, it's another big bat that I think is going to get plugged in somewhere in the middle of the order. Don't know where he's going to play at, but you don't worry about that. You take the bat and then you find a place for him to play. That's just kind of what we do. Kind of like you say, he played third last year, and we got Fisher coming in from Duke. He's going to man third. Hill at shortstop. I would think Leger ends up at second base, but then you can sit there and kind of flop Ross and Furnace there at first base, give another one a day off and let them DH or something like that. So his versatility would be really key, kind of keep guys fresh throughout the year, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Jackson Ross's dad went to Ole Miss.
Okay.
So that was the end, and it was they defeated the Florida Gators in the recruiting head-to-head. So he's a wanted guy.
Yeah, very much.
All right, let's change the subject just a little bit. Get off of Ole Miss baseball for a second. Well, sort of get off Ole Miss baseball. The trade deadline is approaching rapidly. It's about 10 days away from the trade deadline. And the rumor got out today that the Houston Astros and the Tampa Bay Rays are negotiating with the Detroit Tigers over Michael Lorenzen. And that immediately got me thinking, what about Grae Kessinger? This feels like good trade bait. That's a win-win for both organizations because the Tigers, they're honestly ready to move on from Javi Baez. Grae Kessinger could go to Detroit and play shortstop for 10 years if he wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it straight makes a heck of a lot of sense. Obviously following Grae ever since he's been called up, right? And even with Javi Baez there, though, there's a lot of position flexibility with both of these players where you can get them both in the lineup, so it doesn't really matter if they're both primarily shortstops. Javi can go to second, or if they want him to play shortstop, and they can move Grae over to third. He's played that in Houston too when Brakeman was hurt early in the year. So yeah, man, let's kind of speak this into existence. Let's get Grae Kessinger up there to Detroit and give you something else to cheer about up there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a lifelong fan since March. So
I know.
I'm complete, and everybody can see by my Twitter feed, I am completely all in on this. So it's not something that I'm not just doing it as a bit.
Detroit Tigers. Now, granted, you want to break them up after every single win, but I kind of get it in position right now. Right, you can't win too much. Still got to get those high draft picks at the end of the year, even though they do the lottery. So you got to get as many balls in there as you can because you're not ready to win yet. So yeah, you need to flip these guys. Go get Grae Kessinger, and then hopefully the Guardians can get on a little bit of a roll here and kind of get back into the division hunt. And then you can use some more of your trade bait there and go get Doug Nikhazy and bring him in too.
Yeah, seriously, that would be nice as well. It's a really interesting thought because they're like 5-1 after the All-Star break, or 5-2, and I'm like, y'all stop. And the Padres are coming up next. There's a chance they could legit sweep the Padres at home because they missed that pitcher that is so good. Yeah, and they might be 2 games out of first place after this weekend, and I'm like, no, do not go for it. Just Go
No.
sell.
Yeah, they will. It's kind of like the Orioles last year. I don't know how much Major League Baseball you followed last year, but the Orioles kind of come out of nowhere with some of these young guys. They weren't really bringing them up immediately, but you saw them start penciling them in a little bit here and there, and they played really well as a team. And I think they were like 3 games out of the wild card, something like that, when the trade deadline came up. And they went into sell mode. They didn't buy. They started selling their guys, getting more prospects, and gear up for this year. That's what your Tigers need to be doing.
Yeah, and it's really fun. The first time I saw Adley Rushman hit, literally the first time I saw him hit like a 430-foot home run.
An absolute superstar, man. He's going to be the best catcher in baseball if he's not already. He's incredible.
Yeah, whenever I saw that game, their hot shot pitcher was throwing, and you had like Gunnar Henderson at shortstop. It was like an introduction to the Orioles straight up. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's right. And they got more coming. I know some Ole Miss fans will know the name Kristen Kerstad. He played up at Arkansas and just kicked the fire out of us for 3 years. He's on his way. He's in AAA, and he is tearing the cover off the ball. And he's done it all year at every stop he's been. They keep moving him up, and just doesn't seem like anybody's challenging him right now in the minors. So you'll see him up with the Orioles too. And that's a name that Ole Miss fans should remember, though, because he gave us absolute fits for 3 years.
Another name is the number one prospect in the minor leagues right now, which is Jackson Holiday. That is a name that is going to pop up pretty quick as well. Max Clark is down in the Florida Complex League in rookie ball. He has started his professional journey. I am thinking about going to see a game this weekend. I do not know, but I figure I got a week or two of him there before they just bump him up to Lakeland.
Yeah, that'll be fun. You need to get up there and see him if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty good. I think he's the 24 prospect in major leagues according to Keith Law right now. So I'm pretty excited about seeing that. I'm really excited about spring training next year when like Colt Keith and all those guys.
I bet you are. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been like last night I watched the Toledo Mud Hens game. The future is just fantastic. But I'm sitting here watching like Colt Keith and all these other guys that are coming up on the ascendancy, not the 40-man guys that are kind of yo-yoing back and forth, but like the newer type players that could be the next generation to go up. I've been paying attention to them.
Yeah, and Keith's another one. I'm glad you brought him up too, because I've kind of followed him since he's from Mississippi, and he's just been tearing the cover off all year too for him. So obviously super happy for him. Mississippi kid just shooting up the ranks, and he'll be in Detroit before too long if he keeps on going the way he's going.
He'll probably, after the trade deadline, he'll probably end up on the full roster for the end of the year to kind of give him a taste. And I expect him to be up full time starting next year.
Yeah, I do too.
So anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Subscribe there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Every dayers. Derek's here. We've got Tom Vanderford on Sunday night. We got an interview with Charles Stackhouse. We got an interview with Brian Smith this weekend. Is jam-packed. Patrick Broomfield as well, the recruit out of Clarksdale. We're talking to him as well. So tune in for that if you can. Derek, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll talk to you again. I'm not going to say we'll talk to you again this offseason or right before baseball season. I'm just going to assume we're going to talk next week.
Yeah, we probably will, man. We'll come up with something to talk about, I'm sure.
Right. Anyway, take care, buddy.
All right. Hi, Toddy.
Hotty toddy.